I want to talk about what I'm going to call equitable interactions. And I'm meaning equitable kind of in a sense of an equal amount of energy in an interaction. And so this works good with all types of relationships. And my theory is, my premise is that it's good to have kind of a similar or more matched level of investment. In fact, I used to call this skill matching investment, which is a tool I'll talk about a little later in this video. But to start, so say we'll start with a business, a work relationship. So there's an exchange of energy that goes on. The employee's getting paid, and then you're giving that energy, and then it can be negotiated, and maybe the employer is trying to get as much out of the employee as they can, or maybe the employee's slacking to do as little work as possible, or and there's a balance there where it's like a fair investment on both parts. And the best way to do that is to kind of discern where that is, like to feel the energy exchange. You can kind of sense when it's balanced. And another interaction, of course, is in relationships. In romantic relationships, it's both people are invested. And energetically, both people are invested, even maybe financially or energetically, or they're showing up in a similar way. And so that's equitable. And often, with perhaps the people that may be watching this video, a lot of times there's kind of this caretaking thing where people, some of you may have a pattern, I know I do, some of you may have a pattern of giving more energy, than maybe the other person, being more invested than the other person. Or you could be less invested than the other person. And when it does this, when there's not an equitable amount, when there's not an equitable exchange, we'll say it, maybe that's what I'll call this blog. When there's not an equitable exchange, it's out of balance. And so it's good to notice, it's like, okay, if I'm investing more than the other person, maybe I back off a little, maybe I back off a little bit, not try. I'm still there and I still show up with everything, but maybe I don't get over invested. And I'm not trying like so much harder than they are, or putting so much into it than they are, or so much less, And so that's another way that this shows up. I actually learned about this when I was working with clients. And as it might not surprise you, but I tended to be more invested than my clients were at them getting well. So that's out of balance. I can't do the work for them. So I had a teacher, and he helped me. That's where I learned the term he matching investment. I would invest with them, and I would certainly give them all I had as far as my insight and guidance, but I would match their investment. I wouldn't get more invested in them than they were. That's where I learned this. And I just learned how it extends all over the place. And if you're kind of an overdoer or an underdoer, there's usually some people are balanced, and that's really good. Often people have either a tendency to underinvest or overinvest in interactions. And it's good to know, have some self-awareness of what your tendency is. And then it's also, like I said, that the skill is, and then this extends to all friendships, children relationships, like parents relationship, like how many parents get overinvested in their children. I mean, that's almost just gotten, the children are just, it's easy for me to say because I don't have any children, but my observation is sometimes, they've been called helicopter moms or whatever. Parents can get way overinvested in their children. And ironically, I get to do therapy with their children, and it ultimately can have a detrimental effect when these kids are like indulged and the parents are just like just so over involved and over invested. And then, so there's a balance, like be there for your kid, you know, but where's the balance? And you can feel that balance. Like, and the feeling of it will change as your awareness changes as well. But it's like feeling is this, and you can see evidence of it, of being over-invested or being under-invested. You can see, you know, evidence. It's like, oh, I haven't quite been bringing enough at work, and I'm feeling like you can see the evidence of it. It doesn't feel, it feels out of balance, and maybe, you know, your boss isn't as pleased with you. Or if you're over-invested, you feel like you're giving too much, and you're just exhausted all the time, and because you're giving, you know, your workplace, your soul, that's out of balance. You know, they don't pay you enough for that. I just gave the example at work. I work with a bunch of social workers, and they happen to be really burned out. The hospital is have a lot of going on in the hospital these days, and a lot of social work, and they're understaffed, so they're asking these social workers to do more. And it just is like, I called it in my social work meeting the other day, I called it a pressure cooker. It's just like there's more and more being demanded. The clients are demanding, the doctors are demanding. Now there's this new administrator, and she wants everyone that's been there longer than 10 days. She wants extra work from the social worker and wants her reports back all the time on them. And it's just like a pressure cooker. And I said in the staff meeting, I said, you know, at least in like the New York Stock Exchange, which is another pressure cooker, they get paid really well, but we're getting paid as social workers, so it's out of balance. You know, some of the social workers looked at me a little weird when I said that, but hopefully they understood the point I was trying to make is like, it's out of balance. And when it's out of balance, there's burnout, there's resentment, there's just, it's not an equitable exchange of energy. And so it gets to be out of balance. People get their feelings hurt. It gets out of balance. There's resentments, all these different things that are symptoms of, you know, an interaction being out of balance. So what you can do is to just get a sense of what your tendency is, and then in the various relationships and interactions, just get a feeling, and, you know, like this discerning, this intuitive feeling of what feels like being in balance. And then when does it feel like you're going beyond or going below? And then just, it's an adjustment, and and adjusting and matching investment. And then your relationships and your interactions become equitable. In other words, you and the other people in it are giving similar amounts. Another person I know was in a committee, and she just was giving so much more energy than everybody else. And it caused problems, you know, for her and for the other people. And then, you know, she kind of backed off and matched it more, and then it had more balance, and it was actually more effective. So sometimes being over-invested, sometimes it seems like investing more would always be better, right? Investing more would be better. If I'm a therapist and I give more, it's going to be better for the client. But then I'm over-invested and I want it more than they do, and then you get these diminishing returns when you go beyond the balance. So sometimes it's not how it seems. You always figure more is better, but being more invested in giving more isn't always best, which seems to be the most effective amount in any relationship is to give this equitable amount of energy that feels right and allows the relationship to be in balance. So that is my video for this week. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have an amazing Christmas. Wow. And what a cool concept for Christmas, Hanukkah, you know, the holidays, Kwanzaa, all these holidays, whichever ones the winter solstice, whichever ones you celebrate, you know, I hope you enjoy it. And what a perfect time to use equitable interactions in your holiday celebrations with family, which is where a lot of the less than equitable interactions may have come from. So anyway, Have a happy holiday, and I'll see you in a week.